I apologize to anybody who logged on early, but I've been waiting for 11. It's 11, so I'm going to start. Good morning and welcome again. If this is your second time to So You Think You Can Write a Screenplay. My name is Jennifer Manachurian, and I just want to clarify what this course is about. It's really, the purpose of it is not for you to learn how to write a screenplay, but really to decide if you do want to try to write a screenplay. Because the chances are, if you have logged on and you're interested at all, you do have some idea. So I'm going to start today by doing a slight recap, a very brief recap of what we talked about last time for anybody who may not have listened in before. And I will also, I mean to keep looking at you at the camera, but I have some notes, so I'll be going back and forth. I want to do a recap, and if anybody is listening for the first time and they're more interested in knowing more about what I said, you can always go back to the live stream on YouTube, Sarah Lawrence Writing Institute YouTube site to watch it. Basically, a screenplay is structured in 3 acts. The first act is the setup. It's very brief, and you meet the protagonist and you find out what the driving need of that person is. And then the second act is really the bulk of the movie. It's about an hour usually. And that's where that person's meets obstacle after obstacle after obstacle until finally there's a crisis and then a resolution, which is the third act. It's very brief. And every scene in a film is written for a purpose. They all have to drive the story forward and have some form of tension or conflict that helps to make that happen. Nothing is gratuitous. There's no gratuitous scene. There's no gratuitous characters. Everything has a purpose. It sounds very cut and dried and boring, but if it's done right, it works. The character drives the plot rather than the other way around. So character, who that character is, what that character wants, what that's all about is very important. You want to avoid exposition. I'm really running down this very quickly because I have talked about it before. But basically, it's about a page a minute. And so a typical screenplay is between like 90 and 120 pages. But 120 pages, you better have a pretty damn good reason for such a long movie. Most movies are short. I don't mean short, but I mean they're average about 90 minutes. And the endings must be earned. And today I'm going to talk something about beginnings and endings. That's going to be our focus. Also, I have a sidebar with the chat. So if while I'm talking, I will, if anybody has a question that they would like to get answered, I'm going to try to remember to look over there and to respond to it because I didn't do it last time and I apologize. And the last thing I want to say in terms of a brief wrap up is that it's about show, don't tell. Really, it's the camera does a lot of work for you. You can only write in a screenplay what can be seen, what's actionable. And so you're not going to be, you're going to be very clear about not getting overly, I'm sorry, I just got something just distracted me. Yeah, show, don't tell, that's all. I mean, you're not going to be, you don't need somebody to say, oh, it's raining when it's raining, things like that. And so what I had mentioned before is that I do want to talk about beginnings and endings because as a rule, you either win your audience in the first 10 minutes or when you're writing a screenplay, you get somebody to keep reading in the first 10 minutes. I mean, that's a biggie. And you also, the end of a movie, the last 10 minutes is really important. And that's really, it's got to feel like it's the right resolution. It's a sound resolution. It makes sense all the way around. And in general, just beginning with the beginning. People have very short attention spans. So you really want to draw people in quickly. in the first few minutes. They're going to have to know who your main character is, in film language, the protagonist, and what that person wants, because that person's driving need is what the film is really all about. That's what drives the plot. So they need to know who that person is and what's at stake. Last week I had asked that everybody watch the film, Confirmation, which is starring Clive Owen. It's a small indie film that I really recommend because it's a very good film to watch as a learning exercise. It might be imperfect, but there's not a gratuitous word, character, anything in that film. It's very economically written, and it uses vision a lot. When I say show, don't tell, there's so much you can see in that film just by seeing what a character is wearing. Well, that's true in any film, how a person appears, but it just happens to be a very good film for learning. And I had set a list of what I thought you should look for, which I don't know if you did or not, but if you didn't, I would suggest that you go back and just re-look at the part of the film 2 weeks ago, where I mentioned what you should really be looking out for. But in any event, the main character's name is Walt, and he's a deadbeat dad. And what he has to, the first 10 minutes is where you have to know that, and what's at stake is losing his kid. And that's achieved very, very well in that particular film, because you know it, as I mentioned last time, before you've even seen Walt, you know it because you hear a car spluttering and you know right away somebody is having trouble. And then you see him and he's kind of unshaven and he's in this beat up truck, and his character is established very quickly. And then when he goes and he sees his ex-wife, and she says to him, basically, don't mess up or you're not going to see the kid again. And she's about to hand him off for the weekend. You know, that's why he needs to do it right this time. He's a heavy drinker. He's messed up a lot. So this is an opportunity. And so the stakes are all right there. It's a very good beginning of a film, and it's a good lesson in terms of a film, because if you see something where, I mean, foreign films are different because they're not quite so, they can be slower. The audiences, I think, are more patient and they generally they don't have to, it's interesting. They don't really, American films tend to not trust the audiences as much as a foreign film does. They don't have to fill in everything. They allow the audience to fill in things themselves. But as a rule, in films, American films, you really want to, not by being on the nose, but you want to be, you want to make sure people get things. Another, I didn't mention it before, which I had meant to, but there's a film that I've just been watching called Clemency, and it's a really tense film about a prison and a prison warden, who's Alfre Woodard in the film, who oversees executions. So that's another film where I feel like the first 10 minutes are very pivotal, and it's done with very little dialogue. So there I go again to the show, don't tell. You see her, I don't know, I didn't time it, but I would say in the first 3, 4, 5 minutes, there may be no dialogue at all. You see the time of day, it's early, very early in the morning, and she's checking out where the execution is going to take place. And she goes back, I mean, her face is stone. She's an amazing actress. And basically by looking at her face, you understand right away that she's struggling. It's not an easy job, it's tough. And the tougher it gets, the colder she gets, and it impacts her marriage. And she doesn't always, she's a rule follower, and she doesn't always, she does everything by the letter of the law, and she gets challenged about it, but she feels like that's her job. It's not her job to decide if somebody's guilty or not. If they're supposed to be executed and it's at 12 p.m. or a.m. or whatever, she's going to do it. And you get that very early on, and what becomes the stakes is a little less ephemeral. is a little more ephemeral, excuse me. I mean, the stake really is her finding her own humanity, getting back to kind of figuring out who she is and making decisions about her life. So it's a very, I think it's a very effective 10 minutes. And it's something, you know, when you're watching movies, it would, as an exercise or as a learning opportunity, just think about it. Look at your watch, see what time the movie you're watching begins. And 10 minutes in, find out if you know what that movie, where it's going, what that person who's driving the movie, the main character, what do they care about? What do they need? What's going to be informing the rest of the movie? In any event, I'd like to now talk about endings because they're equally important and they have to be earned. When you watch a movie and when you get to the end of that film and you think, oh, why did I waste my time on this? Or, whoa, where did that come from? It's not a very satisfactory experience. So as you're writing a film, I hope you will be, as you're writing a movie and you're coming up with all the obstacles that's going to take you to the end of the film, you got to make very sure that when you get to that ending, that resolution, how that final crisis is resolved, that it's a very, makes total sense and the viewer is going to feel good about it. Even if it's sad, they're going to feel like, okay, that fits. If it's if you see a murder mystery, for example, and if the end comes to you just from left field and it's like you're thinking, wait, where did that come from? And then you start thinking about the movie. And the more you think about it, and you think, no, wait a minute, where were the crumbs there? What did I miss? Was it my fault? Am I dumb? As a viewer, what did I not catch? And if it just doesn't add up, and that can sometimes happen in a movie where they'll just come up with an ending. I mean, to me, that's a complete cheat. You really want it to be, it can be subtle, the crumbs can be subtle, but it all ultimately has to have been there so that the person, because when you're watching particularly a murder mystery, the audience is going to be trying to figure out who done it, along with the character who's trying to figure that out as well. So it's really important that it's not just, you know, you're not amusing yourself and with some crazy ending that the audience isn't going to buy. When you come to a romantic comedy, particularly if it has stars, and most likely it will, it's going to be complete. You're going to know how it's going to end. And if it doesn't end that way, there better be a really good reason that again doesn't feel like that wasn't fair. I thought these people loved each other. So at the last minute, you can't have all of a sudden somebody wind up, you know, at the last 10 minutes of a film, one of the characters who's supposedly in love goes off with some other guy. That's going to feel very, very unsatisfying. And another, in dramas, you know, they can be very sad at the end. There's no reason. I mean, that's perfectly makes total sense. They don't necessarily have to be. They could be hallmarky with the, you know, an ending that makes everybody feel good. The ending doesn't have to feel good. You can see movies that have an ending that is sad, but you have to be prepared for it. Another there was a couple of movies I'd like to bring up that I felt had the type of ending that one of them had the ending that I felt worked and the other one I didn't feel worked, and they were both tragic. One of them was a film called One Day that had Anne Hathaway in it. It was a romantic comedy. So you were involved with her and getting, I think it took place, it was an English movie. I saw it years ago, but I never forgot what happened because you're watching this, her falling in love and having this romance. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of the movie, she goes out into the street and a car hits her and she's killed. And it's like, whoa, that was really unexpected. And, you know, that's not fair. It felt very, very wrong to me. But another film that I don't want to tell you the ending because I want to recommend this film. I just loved it, but you have to like foreign films. It's called The Hedgehog, and it's based on a book. And it's about a woman who's a janitor in a residence like a condo or something in France. And it's about her relationship with the different people. And it's got a charming family that she's very involved with, a very good, uh, there's a very good kid in the movie. I mean, it's a sweet movie. And she's very she's called the hedgehog. She's, she's funny looking. She's young, she's not young. And the stakes for her in this movie, she wants to feel loved. She doesn't like herself. And and it's and by the end of the movie, uh, God, I just hate to tell you the ending. Um, but anyhow, it's a tough ending, and it's not a happy ending for her. And yet, it's not like one day, because she has gotten what she wants. She has found love, and she's found that she's lovable, and that was what she needed in her life. So it's different. It's just a different feeling. So in any event, I'm just trying to emphasize to you how important it is to think about. You have to the biggest chunk of the movie and the hardest piece is what's called Act Two, and that's going to be all the obstacles the person's going to have to go through, and it's really that's pretty challenging part in terms of writing and thinking of plot. But I thought that I would leave you today with the idea of beginnings and endings, and I would like to now talk just really briefly, which is related to what we were talking about surprises. Because surprises in the ending, like I just talked about, to me are very, they can work or they not work. It's not predictable where it went. And if you've really done the right work building up to that moment, it's okay, it's fine. But in general, in the main part of the movie, surprises are great. I mean, you don't want to always be anticipating what's coming next. You want to have some as the twists and turns happen, which will inevitably happen. I like it when it takes you somewhere you didn't expect, but it still works. It's you know, I mean, in any movie, it's just like this is really a formula. There's going to be a crisis near the end. It's going to require resolution. But other than that, it's going to be the more kind of original you can be, and the more your twists and turns are creative and still make sense within the dynamics of or the character of the main the plot and the main character, then they make something, at least for me, far more interesting to watch. I know, like if you're watching sitcoms and they're so predictable, but they're designed to be predictable. You know the characters, you know how they're going to react in certain situations, and you laugh with them. Okay, he's going to mess up again, and if it doesn't happen, it's out of character, and you're not going to like that. But in a film, you've only got an hour and a half or 2 hours with these characters, and while some of it may be predictable and will be somewhat predictable if you get to know these people, you don't want it to be so predictable that you're ahead of everybody. You want to be surprised and learning as you go along. So I'd like to give you a prompt again today, like I did last time, and it'll be based on the same prompt I gave you before. And I'd like you to apply what we are talking about, what I've been talking about, in terms of beginnings to the prompt. And I'm working on a laptop today that I loaned about 5 minutes before this began, because all of a sudden I was in the middle of getting prepared and giving you something to put on the sidebar to show you, when my laptop all of a sudden did into a complete Windows reboot. And so I had to quickly find somebody else's laptop. So I can't put up the prompt. So I'll kind of be repetitive and talk slowly and hope that you can follow along. The prompt that I gave last week, and it's again the same prompt, is a person driving alone on a highway gets a flat tire. That was as far as it went. So the idea is to make it your story, take it wherever you want to take it. The focus isn't on dialogue, but it's on thinking through all the things, all the steps that have to happen to get to the end. It's really I'm really focusing more on plot. So you really start to think through, all right, I have a great idea for a movie. Here's my idea. It's, you know, a one-liner. Here's my tagline. All right, go write it. It's not that easy. You're going to find there has to be a lot of things that have to happen before you get to the end. And so the idea is to start to think through all these things. So today we're going to slow it down. Again, I want to repeat that whatever you choose, think about the tone you want, whatever's going to happen to that character, who can be male, female, whatever, whoever you want it to be, any race, any culture, any age, any gender. It's your person. And that person is going to be now, you're going to be finding out who that person is and what that person needs in the first 10 to 15 minutes, as I talked about in the beginning. So if you did your homework and you started to actually plot this out and think about it, go back to the, sorry, my phone is ringing. Go back to those first, to what you wrote and think about if you can, are you going to, is it going to be accomplished? Are people going to, the audience, are they going to know what it is that you're looking to have happen in those first 10 minutes? What that person wants, what they're needing. Look at it. Think through what could happen. Try to write. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, not a long time, but this is something to continue at home. To just really think through what's going to happen, what's going to transpire in those first 10 minutes. Is the audience going to get a sense of who this person is and what their driving need is? How are you going to achieve that? Are you going to do it through dialogue, through action, through inaction? Are other people going to be involved? Is it going to be through sound? You know, the same way in the confirmation, the sound gave you already some sense of what's going on here. How about appearance? That's really important. How's the person dressed? Is the person, you know, that their attire tells you a great deal about who they are. So think about it. I'm going to give you 5 minutes now, and it's 11:22. So start writing, and I'll come back to you at 11:27. I have to interrupt. I think I've been doing this whole thing on mute. If that's the case, and I genuinely apologize, then I am going to see if I can reschedule next Friday at the same time. God, I can't believe that. Wow. I, I just have to quickly look at my calendar. I think I can do it. Yes, I would like to reschedule this for next Friday. And I will let the people know at Sarah Lawrence Writing Institute. And I really apologize if I wasted people's time. I just have to confirm that I did that. Otherwise, just keep, if I made a mistake, please just keep writing while I try to find out if I did that. Okay, I'm going to continue. And I think it's very possible that I did it on mute. But in the unlikely event that I didn't, I'm just going to quickly sum up, and then I will try to reschedule, as I have already said. I hope you found the exercise worthwhile. I hope you're having fun doing it. That's really the, I mean, I think it's fun, and I guess you have to think it's fun if you want to write a screenplay, because it's a lot of work. But in any event, what I'd like to do for homework this time is I would like you to keep working on this story. I mean, I know it's not a story that was the story you intended, but this is a story that's just a practice for you to kind of get your feet wet in what's involved. So just keep thinking about, I recommend that you use index cards to do it, and just write down scenes, just one line. So-and-so goes to the market and meets an old boyfriend, or whatever it is, just kind of write down all the things that you think could happen. A scene generally is usually pretty short in films. On the page, it's 2 to 3 pages. A film can be like a quarter of a page. I mean, excuse me, a scene. They don't have to be long at all, and they're never very long. You really need a lot of justifications for a very long scene. So just start writing down. Let's just say for those 60 minutes that you're going to have to fill as the bulk of the movie, you're going to want about at least 20 to 25 scenes. So just think about all the things that can happen that are going to move your character towards where ultimately the goal that character has. And every scene, think about it, every scene has to have a reason for being there. And the reason I suggest you do it on index cards is that you can shuffle them around. So, I mean, it's a great way to do it, or just, on little Post-its, so that you can move around with them. I'd also like to suggest a couple of other things that you can always be doing to learn about movies. Because I mean, this would be for people who really feel like somewhat of a commitment towards really learning more about it, that you watch the confirmation a second time. The first time is really to get the story and to kind of understand what's going on. But the second time is really to study the structure. And when you want to do it, you're going to have time to do it, but you want to jot down, stop and start as you watch, and jot down each scene as it comes along. And think about, it could be you sound of engine spluttering, deadbeat guy in car, things, I mean, very, very brief little things. But see, and then write down how many minutes each scene takes. This will give you a sense of how long normally a scene takes. And then after a scene, scenes are actually, screenplays are written and scenes are kind of part of a sequence. So it could be like, I'm sitting here and talking to you now on my iPad, and we get up and I have to go to the other room to respond to something, and then I come back and I talk to you. That's all part of a sequence because it's still the same type of thing is going on. So the scenes are, think about how long each scene takes. So you begin to get a sense of the flow and how much has to happen. Then when you go through the scenes, if you think in that particular film, determine what the function of each scene is. How is that related? It may be just kind of planting the little seed there. Like, for example, when Will goes into a store and his kid, Anthony, is in the truck, and then he meets another kid. Somehow that other kid's going to come back into the movie. So you're going to figure out why later. You're not going to know right away, but make a note of it. Figure out, why are these people introduced? When are they going to come back? How are they going to come back? Are they going to come back? If they don't come back, maybe they don't belong there. Unless it's something that really tells you a lot about that character. So another way of learning, if this is what you're trying to do, is to you're going to be watching movies over the next couple of weeks. When you watch movies, start to watch them. I mean, you want to see what the story's about. So I'm not trying to remove the fun of just being entertained, but start to think about, oh, wait a minute. Okay, that's the main character, and that guy, what he wants to accomplish, what does he need? What is his driving need? Okay. Oh, that person came into the story. Where's that going to fit in? Just start to put an analytical mind into watching, so that you really start to be thinking about what makes that movie work. What about the ending? What about the beginning? Has it drawn you in? If it has, why? If it hasn't, why? Did you stay with the movie? The ending, do you feel like the ending was earned? Was it satisfying? In other words, what I'm just trying to say is just study, because writing a screenplay, as much as people think that they can do it, it's work. It's a craft. And well, of course, it's an art as well, but the craft part of it is that you write a draft of something, and then that's when the work begins. There's a lot of revision involved, a lot of talking to and showing it to people and getting ideas, and then going back to the drawing board. It's work, but if it's for you, you're going to have fun doing it. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining. Bye. Having trouble getting off. Okay. I apologize. This is not my machine, so I don't really know. I'm having trouble finding what I need here.